Hey, everybody, and welcome to our currently untitled Xcast. I'm your host, Wes, and these are my co hosts, Jason and John. Hey, y'all, how are you doing?
Howdy, howdy.
What?
I am doing well. John, I'm sorry I took
What's
a...
up?
No, you're good. I'm sorry.
Oh, good. As you can see, my computer wanted to restart at the wrong time, so now I'm on my phone.
No, it is all good, man. Just excited to talk with you. It's wonderful seeing y'all's beautiful faces.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I think Magneto might have
Likewise.
shocked your computer. Yeah, giving you technical difficulties.
I think
Yeah.
so.
Which brings me to our topic. Today, we'll be reviewing episode 3 of the animated series, Enter Magneto. Now, Magneto has been the number one villain of the X-Men. He made his first appearance in September 1963, and we've seen him in the intro sequence to the animated show, but we haven't seen him in an actual episode until today. So, John and I, we saw the show back in the day. Jason, you're totally new to this, so I
Yes.
got to know, what did you think of entering Magneto?
This was a pretty fun episode. Really cool way to introduce Magneto. Beast is a big old nerd. Wolverine is still angsty as always, and we're gonna get into some of the decisions they made. But overall, I like this episode. This was still super 90s cartoon. Still kind of rolled my eyes on certain parts in the rewatch last night just to make sure I got everything correct. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
Very cool. And John, what are your thoughts?
I will say that Jason hit the nail on the head with some of those characters.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
I remember watching the series back in the day. It's not all fresh in my head, but I will contribute what I can.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's as Jason said, it's very 90s. Some things hit a little bit heavier when I was a kid, and now I'm just like, well, maybe they could have done a different direction with that.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'll never get tired of it.
For me, it's some of the animation. I remember the drawings were pristine as a kid, and now I'm watching it and I'll just see inconsistencies in the frame. What are some of the very 90s things that stick out for both of you?
Pectorals.
Everyone's pretty pecked up, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. 90s pecs, they did it differently back then.
Oh, yeah. What I love, another thing is in the intro, when they're like colliding with each other, the bad guys, they're just like so top heavy and like so like toothpicky in the legs, and they're so crammed together into the screen. Like,
they didn't know about leg day yet. Not in the 90s.
pretty much.
For me, I think it was the overall and we'll talk about it. Just what Magneto was trying to do was like, okay, this has been done. Rockets, can you go any more cliche as a bad guy? Like, I'm gonna blow up the world so mutants will side with me. It's like that's as cliche as a bad guy can get. And otherwise, I thought it was fantastic. Again, we'll talk about it a little bit more, I'm sure. I rolled my eyes at some of the stuff Beast was saying. Oh, now I have more time to read more Dostoevsky. I was like, oh my God, why? Why are you doing this? Why is that a line that someone had to read? Why did someone write that line for an actor to read? Just stuff like that. I was like, it's
How else would you know he's an intellectual?
like, oh, he's reading Animal Farm. Oh, there's there's a bunch of pictures in that book. It's like, well, okay, I'm not gonna go anymore. That is, we'll talk about it. But I wrote some stuff down.
He's coming in hot. I love it.
I just kind of rolled my eyes about. And again, I'm new to this. I'm a baby when it comes to X-Men. I'm just a baby when it comes to X-Men. I don't know this stuff. I don't know what X-Men canon is. But yeah.
So just to touch upon that real quick, and then we'll dive right into the episode. I've never had the opportunity to read this, and I didn't have time to research it, but I do believe that the missile silo thing is based on Magneto's first appearance.
Actually,
So that's why they did it in this series, and also why they redid it in X-Men First Class. Sorry, X-Men First Class, y'all.
oh,
I know X-Men Origins is a hot topic episode or movie, so I won't mention it again.
yeah, but it's funny you say that because I try and find facts before these, just something a little bit more interesting about the actual episode
Yeah.
itself. And what I found about episode 3, again, this is just IMDb. Take this with a grain of salt. But what IMDb said is episode 3 was loosely based on X-Men Volume 1, Number 1, where the X-Men face Magneto for the first time. So it's based off that, which makes sense, but it's just such a cliche thing, man. Like rockets. I mean, it's super easy.
One more time.
Rockets. It's just rockets. Yes. Okay. A little different. They're warheads, but it's still it's just a rocket that can be just push it this way or that way, let it go into the ocean. We have the Dark Knight Rises. They can do rockets in the ocean. It has been done way too many times. I
think, to be fair, the X-Men rocket, because they've done it 3 times, the first time was the X-Men Origins, the X-Men debut in the 60s, and rockets were terrifying because of the Cold War, right? So the tension between Russia and the United States.
I can see that.
I think at the time, during the Cold War Red Scare times, that rockets were terrifying. So now it would be us not having Wi-Fi. That would be our bomb.
Yeah, they hack the stock market or take away everyone's fiber optic, everything like that.
Yeah, a cell phone with no battery.
Quick
Nope.
Back to the Batman note and the bomb. His new movie, Christopher Nolan's new movie, did he really get permission to set off an atom bomb?
No, that is
wildfire spread. Okay,
I doubt Christopher Nolan is.
There's a rumor.
There's no way.
You think Christopher Nolan asked permission to set off an atom bomb? He just does it and asks for forgiveness.
There's no. He likes his practical effects. There's no way the government allowed him to blow up a nuclear bomb wherever.
Yeah, the man's a visionary.
He's like, "Are you sure I can't press this button?"
Whoops. Joke's on you, already pressed it 8 minutes ago. All right, guys, so let's get into this episode. One thing I wanted to jump into was the episode starts with one of my most iconic things. As a kid, Jason mentioned last time that this series is serialized. Mm-hmm. So episodes, there was a continuity to it. So to catch kids up, they started with previously on X-Men. And as a kid, I would get so hyped for that. That to me was like the Fox 20th Century drums and the Lucasfilm logo before Star Wars. Mm-hmm. That just, you knew the excitement was coming. This is the first one of that. And then we see the intro to Magneto, which I loved because it's very atmospheric. You see lights exploding, you see walls opening, you see metallic things flying through the wall, and the guard's pants drops and he runs away, which I'm sure Cassius loved that.
So stupid.
And even Captain. Yeah, he runs off. And Beast even thinks, it's Wolverine coming to get me. And then we see Magneto, and he's just floating there in b-boy stance, and he's got his wide eyes peering through his dark helmet. Jason, I want to know, what was your reaction to that?
So a couple of things. One, the actual introduction to Magneto was super dope. I love seeing, just out of nowhere, Beast reading the Animal Farm, which the Animal Farm exists in the X-Men universe, right? But people don't know what Animal Farm is. One of the notes I have down is guards are very dumb. They don't know what this book is. And if this is in the X-Men universe, this is still a pretty, heavy-weighted book that he's reading. I feel like guards should know. I feel like everyone pretty much knows what Animal Farm is. Heck, we had to read that, I had to read that in college, so I'm pretty sure we had to read that in middle school.
It got banned from us, I think middle school or high school. Yeah.
It wasn't banned at, I think, did we have to read that in high school? I don't remember if we had to read that, Wes, but I remember reading that.
We had to read it, for sure.
Yeah, we definitely had to read that. But if it is in the X-Men universe, I feel like these guards, they have that jock mentality of sorts. It was just kind of eye-rolling a little bit. Oh, come on. You can't be that dumb of a guard. You can't point a gun at the Beast and say, stop, tell your friend to stop doing this. When Beast is, I'm in this cell. I can't be doing this.
Yeah.
Why are you pointing? Why are you making me do something where I have no idea who's doing that? And then, Crumbles, dude gets his belt ripped off and runs like a baby because he's in his whitey tighties and he doesn't want to see Beast to see that. Who knows? Even though Beast is half naked anyway. But having Magneto come in was, just breaking out of the cell wall and just, almost godlike in his, entrance was really cool.
Yes.
I did have something though, like Beast says, "I don't know who you are." Oh, you're Magneto.
I don't think we've ever met.
Yeah, I don't believe we've ever
You
met.
must be Magneto.
Like, what? Beast? How do you know
What
that?
gave it away?
It was really interesting. And then I did make a note, like Beast, whole reason why Magneto is there is to break out Beast. I imagine. I think that maybe not like the sole purpose, but that is part of the reason why he's there. So, break Beast out, I assume, to help, with Magneto's cause. And I wrote down that Beast is such a goody two shoes that he's like, no, I need the people to see that mutants are good, when right next to him is a dude that just ripped open a cell and trying to blow up this base as well, or this gel. It's just really interesting, just really kind of weird, but I dug it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then John, you haven't rewatched it recently, but you watched it back in the day, right?
Yes.
Cool. What do you think about Magneto overall as a character? Where do you kind of place him in your pantheon of villains?
Him and Doctor Doom have always been some of my favorites.
Yeah, agreed.
My top of all time would be the Green Goblin, but we'll get to that in another episode. But yeah, I've always respected Magneto, what he could do, how he could lead his offspring. But I could never really pinpoint his accent in the animated series. It's even hard to mimic.
Great point, because I want to touch upon that. The Magneto voice actor is David Hemblin. And one thing I kind of loved about Magneto, the voice acting, because he's villainous, but he's not arch. He doesn't come across as trying too hard or doing it over the top. It's just this, like you pointed out, he has this accent that sounds like he's a little bit smarter than you and a little bit more arrogant. And that is enough to give him that perfect balance of being a danger and a threat, but not necessarily being an arch villain. Kind of a goon or whatever. And unfortunately,
Also,
David Hemblin did pass away in 2020, November. He had been in the La Femme Nikita movie. So I don't know. They're bringing the series back. I don't know who's going to replace him, but it's going to be some big shoes to fill. Because even though I agree with you, it's a weird accent, I love the voice. Go ahead.
Oh, cool. Also, in the live action movies, you see his tattoo from Auschwitz. I actually incorporate that number into a lot of my artwork. So,
dope.
Yeah, I do.
Dope, man.
If anybody wants a good scavenger hunt, you're welcome to go and find as many numbers as you can. So yeah, I've been doing that for another thing. Okay, so the first X-Men movie is still one of my favorite superhero movies ever. I think it was just so cool.
Great.
With a grain of salt for the time and what they had, I thought it was. Whew. But yeah, I think ever since that movie came out, I've been incorporating that number into a lot of my work. So yeah, I'm a fan.
And Wes, I know you're going to talk a little bit more, and I want to get in. Well, I'll actually let you finish before I get into, because I did have something about Magneto's origin story too. I don't know if movies canon, that is what is, the comics books did, or if this show is doing something else, because the show itself is doing something very, very, very vague. So I don't know if you have anything to touch on that, but I do want to talk about that a little bit.
Do you want to take the floor right now? Or?
So, yeah, I'll go ahead. So, again, coming from the person that has only seen the movies and doesn't really read the X-Men comics, Magneto is Jewish, and he was sent to Auschwitz, concentration camp. And that is where his hatred for non-mutants came from, because of how he was treated. Concentration camps in general were terrible, terrible, terrible things, and they're already inhumane. So in the movies, they did that doubly so for movie mutants. So is that legit? Is that his origin story? Or did was that just manufactured for the movies, and the comics in this show are different? Because as I mentioned, in this show or in this animated series, we haven't seen, with this first episode, we aren't given a backstory to Magneto. We are given snippets of a country and something happening. Like, that's it. It looks like a very European country from a snippet that I've seen, but that is all I know of his backstory, and is from his time in the concentration camps. Is that true? Is that movie only?
So, yeah. So originally, Magneto was just an opponent to the X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
He was their biggest villain. Chris Claremont, who deserves a ton of credit for modernizing X-Men and really making them what they are today.
Okay.
We kind of touched upon him last episode. We touched upon him previously on Untitled Xcast. How he had introduced Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler to the X-Men. So he really expanded the lineup. He wrote the Dark Phoenix saga. He did a lot of the big storylines. The Hellfire Club, it was something he introduced. Chris Claremont's actually the one who introduced Magneto's backstory. He modeled him after an Israeli prime minister, Menachem Begin. And that guy was a convicted terrorist in 1947, but would later go on to win the Nobel Peace Prize. So that is who Magneto was modeled after.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of comparisons to Malcolm X, but Chris Claremont says that the 70s were too close to the assassinations that he didn't want to touch upon that.
Yeah.
And it had been some time removed from 1947, so he was more modeled after a Jewish figure, and that the Holocaust story is canon.
Okay.
And that's actually, his original name was Max Eisenhardt. He was in the concentration camp, and that's where he met his wife, Magda, who is the mother to Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. Okay.
Oh.
Eric Lenscher, Magnus was a nickname he adopted, and then Eric Lenscher ultimately became an alias that he took upon to evade the Nazis. Okay.
Okay.
And I'll get into my theory on the vagueness is, okay, because in the comics, this is all true. The series is just very vague about it. So Eric and Charles Xavier are friends. They don't tell each other that they're mutants, and they are discussing mutant kind and all that stuff, right? Yeah. It isn't until a villain shows up and causes them to both reveal their mutant powers. Do you have any guesses, you guys, as to who the villain is that shows up? I will give you a hint. He's associated with Nazis.
Associated with Nazis? Is it Hugo Weaving's character from the Marvel?
Red Skull?
Red Skull? Is it Red Skull?
No, but you're on the right path there. It is Hydra. Hydra does show up, but they're led by Baron von Strucker.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know who that is, but okay.
He's in the MCU. He's the guy that turns Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch into he's the guy with the monocle. He's the one that talks about the age of what does he call them? I forget, but it's not mutants. They couldn't use the word mutants because they didn't own Fox yet. I think they called them miracles.
Oh.
But he's the guy that uses Loki's scepter to transform Wanda and Quicksilver and Pietro.
Oh, interesting.
In the movies. Yeah. So Baron von Strucker shows up, causes them both to reveal their mutant powers. And yeah. So my theory as to why the show doesn't specifically say, because one, I did write this in my notes. I love that Xavier says, we met after a war.
Yeah.
Nobody talks like that. Like, you might say after a concert, because you go to many concerts. But we met after a war.
He was just a friend during the war. That's, is no biggie.
And I think it might be because of timing, because because as brilliant as Magneto's origin story is, attaching him to World War II, the farther we get away from that, he's going to be like 150 years old at one point. Yeah. So I think the series wanted to be vague about it, just say a war and island soldiers, to not bring up the controversial Holocaust, to protect the children, but also maybe to not have it specific in time.
I can see that. I mean, that's some heavy stuff to throw onto some kids, so I can see why they would do that. I didn't think about that. But
you have to explain the Holocaust to a 5-year-old
I was like,
on Saturday.
You might not be. Let's give it a couple more years before we talk about that. But okay. That makes sense.
There were a lot of rewrites, if I remember correctly. It was like some Stan Lee documentary that I was watching. They had to do a bunch of rewrites for the show because a lot of the material was a little too dark for kids. Yeah. So it was like a series long thing. Like, well, we can't do that. We can't say that. But still, what they produced was great.
Yeah, no,
it makes sense.
Yeah, I even said in the first, episode we did, this show is already grounded in a reality, and this is already giving some kind of heavy, stuff for kids. So I can see that, but I was just curious on why it was being so vague. But that makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah. And I just wanted to point out one thing, and I hope we can find a GIF of this to put in right here. But the transition of after Xavier and Magneto get into a disagreement and Eric Lencher walks away and he just looks so determined and he's focused, he's staring forward, and then he transitions into Magneto and he's still walking. I just thought that was a brilliant little animation clip that said a lot without having to tell you. Like, and then he went on to be a villain. Yeah. It's just that's the fire that burns in him still, that moment. But yeah, and then we have the trial of Beast. I know he's your favorite character, Jason, so I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Beast is supposed to be such a smart person, right? Like, can you not read the room? Can you not read that this judge, that these people are going to convict you whatever you tell them? It's just, I don't know, like, what I don't like about shows is when they don't, like, they've just come to a conclusion. That is it's not a pet peeve because you can't just jump to conclusions, but I hate when shows, when characters, when anything just jumps to a conclusion before that character or whatever is being said is given a time to explain what actually happened. Like, they just come and say, "Oh, you're guilty, get him out of here."
It's a 30-minute time slot, Jason.
It's so. I know why they do it. They do it, for pacing reasons. It's just I hate it when stuff just comes to a conclusion out of just, oh well, this plus this equals this. You're guilty, which is never the case, at least in cartoon shows like these. So having Beast give this heartfelt thing and just like, well, because of your past crime, oh my God, don't get me on. Sorry,
if you prick us, do we not bleed? Don't encourage them.
What did I say? Oh, this is where I said, Beast, get off your high horse for once. Just, we know you're smart. You don't have to riddle. You don't have to give all of your speeches. Doesn't have to be above, your IQ level here. Just talk like, just be chill, okay? Just be chill.
Yeah. They're going to convict him guilty of being a nerd.
He's such a nerd. He's such a big nerd in this. But yeah, like, just having, like, for being such a smart character, Beast is very, I wouldn't say narrow-sighted. He just doesn't know how to read rooms. Like, I know it's for pacing and for story purposes that he isn't able to read. Maybe this isn't going to go my way anyway. But it's like, well, I guess I have more time to read Dostoevsky, or that was such a. I rolled hard on that part last night. I was like, oh my God, Beast.
Jason, not a fan of Russian literature.
Apparently, I'm just not a fan of Beast's dialogue. And then
John, go wrap.
No, I was gonna say how are you allowing people to bring in fruits and veggies into this courthouse to throw at Beast? Like, what the heck? Come on.
They don't set off the metal detector.
Those are different times back then, Jay.
Yeah.
It was the 90s. We could do that kind of thing back in the 90s.
Yeah, we had those kind of tomato freedoms back then.
I want my tomatoes back.
Yeah. And John, what are your Jason obviously is not a big fan of Beast or Russian literature, but John, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Beast? Both you're more of a comic fan, and from knowing what you know about him from the comics, the movies, the series, what are your overall thoughts on Beast?
I'm trying to figure out what he actually wrote now. Beast, is he my favorite character? No. Is he impressive? Yes. Is it cool to see a bookworm get the ability of, lifting up, 10-ton trucks? Awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
I think he brings a good dynamic. He definitely brings some humor, as we can see.
Is it humor
Unintentionally.
though? Is it humor? It's like Big Bang Theory humor. That's what that kind of is. It's like, oh,
Exactly.
I'm smart because of this. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan
But
so
even
far.
but even some people need that kind of thing. Like, oh yeah, I can relate to that guy. I'm
I
not
mean,
very funny,
yes, representation is important. I understand it. It's just
Indeed.
I hate his dialogue. I just hate his dialogue.
I hear you. Then again, that's another thing I love about the X-Men is like the whole diversity, all the different characters in one sitting. And somehow get along when it's crunch time.
Yeah.
And again, definitely, I wouldn't say definitely, but not my favorite character. But I do love Beast. He's he is appreciated.
One of my favorite moments. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say the judge himself. He's so cocky. He's such a cocky judge, and like we're going to sentence you for your past crime for it's destroying the mutant control agency and for destroying the jail. I was like, I did that to myself. I was like, he didn't do any. He put his chains back on. Why are you citing him for that? He didn't do it. One felony is enough. He didn't do it. The second felony that you're trying to pin him on.
Which brings me to what I wanted to say is Beast's lawyer is such a twerp, and they drew him like such a dork. And he says, "But Your Honor, my client is charged with a simple felony."
I wrote that too. Look, let me see if I can.
A simple felony?
Like there is right there. Right there. A simple felony?
A misdemeanor, an infraction is simple. Felonies are serious. There's not simple felonies.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird.
I was laughing so hard at that. Yeah. Well, it didn't go well for Beast, unfortunately. But guess who crashes the party?
It's Mr. Naked Man.
Jason's favorite naked man, Sabretooth, shows up and totally crashes the party. And one thing I like, I know Jason, you think he's naked.
Yes.
John, what are your thoughts on Sabretooth overall as a character? Kind of want to hear what you think.
I'm still kind of in disbelief that him and Wolverine aren't related. Like,
Wait.
I believe in the comic they're not. Am I right? They're not related? Am I reading that wrong?
They might be. They might retcon it, and then they might be again. It's very confusing.
Oh, okay.
And then it might be a false memory. So
Yeah,
it's kind of like whatever canon you like and stick with that at this point is my personal philosophy.
exactly. And it always confused me. Like, again, like in comics, this universe is different from that one. That flip flops and all that. But that was always one thing that bugged me. Like, are they related? Are they not?
I believe in the X-Men origin because after they did the first X-Men movie, Marvel swore for a long time they were never going to reveal Wolverine's past. But then they said Hollywood's going to come and do it anyway, so we're going to tell our story, our version of it. And if I remember correctly, it's been 20 some years since I've read it. They were brothers.
Okay.
Sabretooth, Victor Creed was James Howlett's older brother. James Howlett's Logan's birth name, but he was the older brother.
Gotcha.
If that's what I remember. If I'm wrong, Jason will hit me with a red X right here. Yeah. Cool. So what did you think of the naked man who gets easily beaten by 3 humans with pistols or blasters?
I was like,
They hit him one time and he goes down like a clown.
like a stormtrooper.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it the first time I watched it, but now that you say that, and after watching this episode and the next 2 episodes kind of they coincide, it's like, oh, this totally makes sense on why he got down so easily. But Wolverine is so angsty. He's like, oh, Sabretooth, I gotta go kill him now, and like, let me just do it, please. And I don't know, it was really weird.
I want to murder him so bad.
No, for real. That's kind of exactly that exactly what he wants to do.
I get why Sabretooth. I get why Sabretooth didn't win the altercation. I don't know how the X-Men fell for such a simple ruse. Like, they hit him 3 times. He must be down.
Yeah, that's what I have too. I have, and this is more in the next episode. But also, we also mentioned this in the last episode, Wes. Cyclops, his laser beam has varying levels of power to him, right? So in the first 2 episodes, he's just kind of spinning his sunglasses, whatever. like he's blowing off robot arms and knocking them down. In this one, he just kind of shoots lasers at 3 security guards.
Pushes humans away.
it just kind of pushes them.
Just gently brushes aside humans with his fiber optic blast.
I think I don't know how Cyclops does it, but he can control light in ways that I didn't think he was able to. And I don't know if that's just writing, like Cyclops can't, laser these people in half every single time. I thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah. I totally agree. I laughed at that. I forgot to write it in my note, but I totally laughed at that. And then the X-Men decide it's a good idea to bring this guy who's hurling cars and breaking into courtrooms. They bring him home. Wolverine approaches Sabretooth's bed, and he walks from the shadows, and his eyes are visible. And I thought that was such a cool visual. Makes no sense in the laws of physics, but it's a very cool visual. He's got his claws out. And I thought it was a horrible idea, obviously. But Storm does make a good point about people could have said the same thing about you when we brought you in.
And
all of a sudden, I was like...
Yeah, it makes sense. But at the same time, the very first episode, the very first scene is of a news showing Sabretooth destroying cars.
Yeah.
And now, I guess now that I think about this, we didn't see this from the X-Men's perspective. We just see this from Jubilee's family, when I assume Jubilee as well. I don't remember if she was actually in the room during that news broadcast, but it's not like that's the first time Sabretooth has been seen. And I don't feel like... I feel like, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, they don't heed Wolverine's warning, like, at all, through this entire episode. And again, we'll probably talk about that more in the next one. But yeah, like, they don't trust Wolverine's opinion on this, which is like, dude, I think you should listen to him. I think he knows what he's talking about here.
He's also coming off as a hothead, though. So it's like, you don't really see him that in control. Yeah. And there's a cool, I love how he just shoves this bed, which was heavy, with a heavy Sabretooth on it, just tosses it aside.
Like it's on ice.
But they added this cool guitar riff, so I believe it. I believe that he can do it because the guitar riff. It was awesome. And then... they bring us to, we'll touch upon Sabretooth more in the next episode. Mm-hmm. So I want to get right back to Magneto, because this is this is the episode about entering him.
This is.
And we get into the big showdown, which, it's exciting. What did you think about this big battle, Jason? I know you said it kind of was cliche, but...
It is. Overall, I think, the stakes were up there, sort of, even though we know how it's going to play out. I don't know if I like the reasoning behind why Magneto is doing this, because the whole thing is Magneto wants to bomb this base so he can bring, mutants together as one unified force, right? Mm-hmm. But because we have such opposing views between Professor X and Magneto, I feel like that should have been something Magneto was, he knew that wasn't ever going to be something like that. And I wrote down the line, and I got this from episode 3, Return of the Sith. If you're not with me, you're against me. It's that kind of mentality. It's like, okay, come on, dude. You're like, this isn't a two-way street here. There are going to be intersections. There are going to be forks in the road. There's better ways that this can be done instead of just nuking the entire base. So I did write that down.
I love how he just assumes anytime he sees a mutant, he's like, "Oh, you're here to help me and do this."
Chum,
you're here to join my cause.
Come help me kill these people. We need you, buddy.
Yeah, and then he's baffled. He's like, "You don't want to just send nukes to people?" Like, wow.
But this is how it works. This is
the audacity.
Samsonite. I was way off. Not working out for Magneto. But he did have one thing the whole episode was, because we see him in the intro as well, is he doesn't have the Brotherhood of Mutants with him, right? And he did have a line, though, about Brotherhood. And I was like, oh, he hinted at it, so I was kind of hoping.
What is that?
Brotherhood of Evil Mutants?
Yeah. Is it just the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants? Is that pretty much?
Put a pin.
Okay.
Put a pin in that. We'll come to it later.
Okay.
No, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants is the anti-X-Men. So it's
okay.
the team that Magneto's assembled. So it's Mystique, times Sabretooth, Juggernaut, Avalanche, Pyro, Toad, or as you call him, Frog. Yeah. So that's the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And they also, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
I can see that just from the MCU movies that I've seen, but okay, cool.
Yeah. And I liked that Magneto has that line about better to die on our feet than to live on our knees. And I believe that's Emilio Zapata. If not, I will get hit with
another X.
Pancho Villa. God, hit me with the red X. Go ahead, right there.
Okay.
Cool. All right.
Future Jason, you got that.
Thank you, John. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So is that really a Pancho Villa quote?
I'm pretty sure it was him. My dad had gotten like a poster of that when I was young, and it was hanging in my room for a very long time. I was like, wait a minute, I remember that.
Wow, I didn't. That is really interesting.
With the two bandoliers, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty gangster.
Okay.
One question I have during the sequence is, what exactly did Magneto do to the X-Men? Because if you watch it, he puts them in a magnet bubble, I believe. He lifts them into the air
and just drops
them,
right?
Unmagnet bubbles them, and they collapse lifelessly. And Storm can fly. I get why Wolverine and Cyclops hit the ground, but even Storm just falls, and I don't understand what was going on in that bubble that took them out of the game.
You know, if you do the biophysics behind all that, if you interrupt all the synapses and electronic field magnetism thing related to that, you could fry somebody's brain. You could shut off all like their movement and everything. You could do some damage, man.
But
put in like a permanent seizure.
I love that because you made it go from terribly goofy to very terrifying.
To very something that could actually,
biology rocks, man.
Yeah.
That brings me to a point though. Has Magneto always had the powers to create force fields out of nowhere?
Yes, in the very first issue, he's got his force field around him, and Cyclops is putting a dent in it with his fiber optic glass. And then, what did you call Iceman? Spitwad? Spitwad is shooting his spitwads at Magneto as well.
Okay.
So he, since his first appearance, he has that
ability. I wasn't sure. Gotcha. So that is a comic thing.
Beast is flying at him with his bare feet. He's about to just foot him to death. And then Angel has a bazooka.
Oh.
It's cool to have a totally useless superpower like angel wings.
Like Aquaman.
Like, yeah, you can fly. But for combat, he's like, I got to bring in a bazooka. It's like, you're as useful as that guy over there.
Even Batman had pistols.
But Batman never used them, supposedly.
Yeah, so the X-Men don't even get to lay a finger on Magneto. They get easily, their synapses get disrupted. And then Wolverine decides, they don't have enough time. The nuclear missiles, they're opening up. They're about to go off. And Wolverine decides at that moment to demonstrate that he has an expansive knowledge of nuclear missiles because he says, not on my watch. And he runs in like he knows what he's about to do. And I was like, interesting. I don't know that Wolverine has any familiarity with nuclear silos or missile launch codes.
Wait.
How is he going to solve this?
Wes, you mean...
He does it.
You mean to tell me that to stop three nuclear warheads from going off is just to destroy consoles and say, where is the switch?
Yes.
It's like, what is that going to do? What is that going to do? I have that written down as one of my notes. Destroying a console, looking for a console. It's like, it's going to be one of these.
Yeah, say, not if I have anything to do with it. Run in there, and 5 seconds later be like, where's the switch? I don't know what I'm doing. But it's good that you took out all the screens because the screens do things.
Those navigation points, they weren't of any use to anyone.
Ah,
Who needs them?
We can't see the radar, so the missiles can't see the radar either.
But that brings us to Cyclops, or that brings us to Storm. All right, going to sacrifice yourself. You know, we got Cyclops saying, "Storm, don't do it." Then we got Professor X. I don't remember exactly what he says. I don't honestly remember exactly what Storm was doing. I just know that she used wind to redirect those missiles. So something about the inner guidance system, right? Isn't that what Professor X said? Right?
So as I rewatched this, I thought that Storm was going to do the logical thing and throw these nukes into the ocean. I just thought that made the most sense. Why not do that? Apparently, that's not what she had in mind. She was going to go fly them overhead somewhere and, I guess, detonate them. Because they even say, is Storm going to do what I think she's going to do? And Xavier has to, like, stop her and say, use Cerebro to learn the secrets of the missiles.
Which...
Cerebro is a mind-reading helmet. The nukes don't have minds to read.
That is what I was thinking. I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense.
And she
Are
really
they
needed...
AI powered?
Is Cerebro AI, or is that just to help magnify Professor X's abilities?
What are the limitations to Cerebro? Does it only read carbon-based intelligence, or is it artificial intelligence as well?
Well, but I thought that it was to amplify Xavier's powers. How can he remotely tell Storm, who has no telepathic powers, to use Cerebro that he's currently wearing to read the missiles' minds?
Can he power robots?
Why was all that necessary to just drop them into the ocean?
And you know what's even funnier?
Why not?
You could have just told her, like, hey, Storm, that's not a great plan. Just dump them in the ocean.
I mean, okay.
If you think Beast takes too many steps,
this
was super convoluted.
Plot armor for the sake of plot armor aside, it was really stupid a way to detonate those things. What I found funny is Storm had, redirected them back to the military base before taking them back out. So she made a U-turn before heading back out to the ocean.
I had a moment there too where I was like, wait, what is she doing now? Like, what? Why? But yeah, Storm, man. MVP of this episode, at least for the nuclear sake.
I do love, though, that after she, expels her energy to get those out. And we see Cyclops and Wolverine, and we see, Storm falling down. And Cyclops is, it's too late for her. And then Wolverine goes running off. He's like, no, don't do it. And like, dude, Cyclops, you're not that far away. You can try and save her still. Like, come on.
Cyclops, he 3 episodes in, he's given up on his teammates a lot.
He's given up on his teammates, and he's blown up a lot of military bases to get into the actual military base. Like, that's one of my notes. Like, why is he destroying stuff like that? Can he just jump over like they did in the first episode? Like, just sneak in? I don't know.
Well, again, for him, he's like, stealth didn't work. It got 2 of my guys, one detained and one murdered. So he's a little bit more aggressive this time than it worked.
He is.
They don't lose a member.
But yeah, it was a really goofy way to not end the episode, because I do have an extra note about Magneto. But it was goofy. It was definitely where the 90s come in. It's a 90s cliche. We need someone to sacrifice themselves. Oh, they're not actually sacrificing themselves, but they get the job done in just a very convoluted way.
Yeah. Another convoluted thing is Xavier is like, here's my biggest nemesis who's about to fire nukes at civilians. This is very important. Let me send 3 people to take care of this.
Oh.
Jean Grey, Gambit, Rogue, take the day off. Even Jubilee, you stay here.
And
you babysit this murdery monster.
Jubilee, you babysit the dude that just came in and is most likely stronger than you. We are leaving the 16-year-old so we can have the no. That's I'm sorry. I'm getting my
I know
episodes mixed up.
we'll get more into that on the next episode, but I think we're on the same page there.
I do want to say though, I missed this. So back when Wolverine is talking to Professor X about Sabretooth and said, "Let me just kill him and get rid of him or something," Professor X says, "No, we want to try and help," but then immediately comes around and say, "Oh, I feel Magneto. Y'all need to go stop him right now." Like, that's such a big hypocrite line from Professor X, and even
Wolverine calls him on
it. Wolverine calls him out on it, but still doesn't allow Sabretooth or Wolverine to deal with Sabretooth in his own way. But he wants them. I found that very hypocritical, and I think that is something that comes into play way more in the next episode in his ideals.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. You said you had a note about Magneto.
I did, and I'll talk about this more. Again, this is a very cliche thing, but we always have to have someone giving a speech to himself, to no one, just giving a speech. And Magneto gave a speech at the very beginning when we first see him. Magneto gave a speech at the very, before he sends off those rockets. And Magneto was talking to himself at the very end before the end credits. Like, "Oh, Professor Xavier, I see. Well, this is how it's going to go. We are, you will not get the best of me." I don't remember exactly what he says, but he's talking to himself out loud, exposition dump, if you will. But I wrote that a few more times later on. I was like, I hope this isn't a running thing.
A little teaser for the next episode. He does have a speech that I'm very excited to cover.
Oh gosh.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Well, final thoughts on X-Men, on Magneto, John?
Oh. I don't. Man, what do I say? It got me off guard here. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, we'll circle back. Okay. Jason.
Fantastic episode. Loved it. Stupid in amazing ways. I can't wait to see how Magneto grows as a character in this. I hope he grows as a character in this, and it's not one-dimensional bad guy. But yeah, I can't wait to see what this next episode has, and yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think for me, this was my first exposure to Magneto. This, like I've said before, X-Men is a huge part of my life. I love it. It's my favorite, I guess, IP. If I really had to say, it's my favorite IP. And this series was my introduction to X-Men. I've since become a huge, huge comic book fan. But this also brought me into that fold of comic books. So that's why this played such a big part in my life. But this was my first exposure to Magneto, and it definitely introduced him as a very compelling villain. Because, excuse me, one thing Stan Lee said about him that I read was that he said he never saw him as a villain, but more as a danger. And I think that's very on point. And Stan Lee might have said that after, like he might have been like, that might not have been his original plan, but he's might patting himself on the back later. But yeah, well, now that I see, might have been George Lucasing his own creations in some way. But I do think that comment either way is very on brand, because he's a character that what Chris Claremont was kind of discussing was that he is the example of when you're faced with ultimate evil, you have a choice. You can either look for a better way in the case of Xavier, or you have violence begets more violence. And that is what Magneto is. He's the Frankenstein's monster. He's the product of a harsh environment. And you had mentioned earlier that, you'd mentioned earlier that the Holocaust was when he learned that humans hated mutants, but I don't think that's accurate. I think that's when he lost his faith in humanity.
That makes sense.
That his exposure in the Holocaust gave him a reason to understand that humans will turn on other humans quickly just because they're different. And then as his mutant powers, they were beginning to manifest in the Holocaust, but they weren't fully in his control until adulthood.
Yeah.
And then he had to relive that. He's different again. And he already had lost faith in humans. So that's why at that second time that he's different from his fellow humans, he didn't give peace a chance. And as he famously says, peace was never an option. Because he lost that as a child and the mutant powers manifest, he never considered that there was a peaceful coexistence.
Okay.
He went straight to war.
Cool.
No?
I'm ready for my statement.
Yes.
My dad famously always told us, like, yeah, I learned English from comics. And my cousin was also a huge fan when he was growing up. And I remember reading through their old like material, their old comics. Like a few of them I still have. And, you know, it was always so great, like, you know, reading. Because, again, if anybody doesn't know, I like to draw.
Great artist.
Very good artist.
Thank you. But yeah, it was always, as a kid, you know, it's always great, like diving in, seeing these pictures, learning, but, you know, reading these stories, like, you know, you can put in your own imagination, like the voices on these characters, but when they actually came to life and you were able to, like, you know, wake up early Saturday and like really get into it, and, you know, they put voices and like, you know, motion into these characters. It was so cool seeing everything come to life through the comic as candid as they could keep it. And yeah, when Magneto first appeared, I was like, ooh, you know, I still remember the chills, you know, coming up.
Yeah.
Like, oh, now we're getting it, man. The big baddie. Here we go. Yeah, and it's been great. I got to catch up on the animated series. I'll be more caught up on the next cast, but yeah, I love it, man. I love it all.
Nice.
Cool. And just a side note, my abuela also learned how to read English from Batman comics. That's cool, man.
Cool.
That's cool. And that's another reason why it's a big part of my family. But I didn't know that. I got into the animated series and then had uncles on both sides of my family that were huge into comics. But yeah. Well, cool. Well, this wraps it up. We have officially entered Magneto. And we will catch you on the next Untitled X-Cast. We might have a title by then. Who knows? It could get exciting. But I appreciate y'all both for being here and appreciate you viewers for sticking through.
Yes, thank you so much.
So same next time, same X channel. We'll see y'all.
Bye.
Later, y'all.